All right, guys, before we get started today, a big thank you to our partner, Microsoft Surface, celebrating 10 years of partnership with the NFL. As the official laptop, tablet, and sideline technology provider for the LA Chargers, Microsoft Surface provides players and coaches with the tools to succeed, both on and off the field. Learn more about Surface at surface.com. And welcome into a brand new season of The Final Drive. Alongside Hayley Elwood and senior writer Eric Smith, I'm Chris Hayre. Chargers win in Week 1, 24-19 against the Raiders. Guys, what a way to start the 2022 season for the Chargers. Hayley, I'll start with you because we always joke about this podcast being named The Final Drive. How about the final drive for the defense? That Khalil Mack sack, his third of the game, to seal it and get the Chargers to 1-0.
Yeah, I was just pulling up my Twitter because you tweeted yesterday it wouldn't be Raiders-Chargers without a final drive in the fourth to decide it.
Of course.
Such is life. 2022, we're back. It felt kismet that was how this game ended. And Khalil Mack has talked all offseason long about not really wanting to talk and just more wanting to show what he can do and have his play do the talking for him. And it certainly made a lot of noise yesterday with 3 total sacks, and particularly that one that came at the very end. Don't forget, though, there was that one right before, too, and the defense was just dominant, and I think that was a huge question mark coming into this game, just how all these new pieces would fit and work together, knowing that they made such an investment on that side of the ball this offseason. And after yesterday, looking at the production, the 6 total sacks, the 3 interceptions, certainly looks like it's for real, and it's going to be a force out there this season.
Yeah, it looked like a different unit from last year. And I should mention Joe Reedy of the AP going to join us in about 10 minutes for a roundtable. But Eric, your overall thoughts on what you saw out of this Chargers team. I didn't really have a read going into Sunday as to what to expect, but all in all, a pretty complete performance.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I think there's so much unknown going into Week 1 every season, and players and coaches talked about that last week entering the game against the Raiders. Just that you just don't know what you're going to get, and that's especially true when the other team has a new head coach, new coordinators. There's just a lot of unknowns. I thought it was a pretty strong performance in Week 1. I don't think it was an A-plus performance, and I think players and coaches would probably agree with that. But if you can get a win in Week 1, especially in the AFC West with how good that division is going to be, you take it, and then you move on. But overall, definitely more positives than negatives. You got talked about the defense that stood out to me. I'm sure we'll get into it too, but this was my first game, right, as the Chargers employee,
yeah.
And seeing Justin Herbert was incredible. I mean, and I that's probably like not news to you two, but to me, he was fantastic, and I can't wait to watch him for the rest of the year.
Yeah, his first touchdown goes to early Offensive Rookie of the Year candidate Xander Horvath. I think everybody had that one, right? Everyone had Xander getting that first touchdown, no question. It was Xander, it was DeAndre Carter, and it was Gerald Everett, Hayley. Yeah. 3 guys who were not even on this roster last year, and it kind of proves what we've talked about all the time with Justin. If you're open, it doesn't matter if you're Keenan Allen or Mike Williams or Xander Horvath, Justin's going to find you.
It doesn't. And, Brandon Staley opened his press conference yesterday by talking about how they needed everybody. And that's essentially what you need in the NFL, when you need those contributions, when your star receiver gets hurt, exits the game. Okay, whatever, let's pick it up. Oh, DeAndre Carter. Oh, Xander Horvath. Gerald Everett, another guy who is new this year. And so it's the contributions from everyone that I think, again, if you're starting this in Week 1 and you're getting these guys involved early, that can only benefit you as the season goes on, that you're not just relying on the Keenans and the Mikes, that you're getting these other guys involved. But 100%, I totally agree with you, and I think that's the beauty, like you said, of Justin Herbert. He's going to find you. We've heard a lot this offseason about going through progressions and how that is something that he's attempted to master and work on, and not just the first and the second, but get into the third and fourth read out there when plays break down and times get tough. And he certainly made the most of those opportunities yesterday.
He targeted 11 different receivers. I didn't know there was 11 receivers on the team. He targeted 11 different guys. 9 players caught a pass, I believe. His final stats, 26 of 34, 3 touchdowns, a quarterback rating of 129.4. As far as the running game didn't really get going much, but there was that drive that Joshua Kelly had that I thought he ran really, really hard. And I think, Eric, I don't know if it was the Gerald Everett touchdown that capped that off. But I thought Joshua Kelly had a nice run there, and it was kind of reminiscent of what he looked like in the preseason.
Yeah. I think J.K. did pretty well, and Coach Daly mentioned him too in the post game presser. I think Josh had 18 snaps yesterday, and Sony had 16, so a pretty even split there at the RB2. Kind of like what Hayley said, you're going to need everyone, and the run game, wasn't great, but it was probably, it was as good as it needed to be at times. Kind of trying to salt the game away late. But that's okay. Like I said, it's week 1. Like I said, you take what you can get, especially against a pretty good Raiders defense. We haven't talked about the O-line yet, and that kind of comes into it too. Maybe not in the run game, but the pass game. 0 sacks allowed against 2, elite edge rushers and Max Crosby and Chandler Jones. There was some pressure, sure, but if you can keep Herbert off the ground, with no sacks, that's a win any day.
Yeah, Eric, it's the continuity, too. I think both of you guys can speak to this. When you have Rashawn Slater in that same position for a second straight year to go with Filer and Lindsley and Zion, it was just cool seeing how excited Zion was to get that first game under his belt in the locker room. And then Trey Pipkins, man, you said it. These are 2 elite edge rushers. And we all remember how it ended in Week 18. Max Crosby wrecked that game. But Hayley, it was good to see them keep Justin Herbert clean against, 2 elite guys.
In talking with Trey Pipkins this offseason, this training camp specifically, so much of what he said that's led to sort of his, I don't know if you want to call it resurgence, but more just like comfortability now is a confidence. And he said almost kind of letting go too, like almost sort of taking a step back and just kind of getting back to the basics and not thinking as much when he's out there. And I think you saw that a lot yesterday. And I think you also saw just a more confident player who, Joe Lombardi spoke to this last year and Trey did too. When he came into that Denver game at the end of the season for Storm Norton, he said that was sort of the confidence that I needed to be like, hey, I can play in this league. I can play this position and I can do it well. And now that I think he knows that this is his role, Brandon Staley made it very clear, we're not going to go back and forth. Like whoever wins this starting right tackle job is going to be that guy. Now that I would assume he knows that it's his, there is that confidence there that he doesn't have to worry about, what's, someone lurking on my shoulder, what's going to happen. He can just kind of go out there and do it. And I think you saw it. And I just think, when the Chargers drafted him in the 3rd round a few years ago, it was out of Sioux Falls. It was a small school, and there were a lot of questions about that. But you've seen him grow and you've seen him develop. And I think yesterday was a really positive outing for him.
Yeah, I think people forget that he wasn't supposed to play his first year. He was kind of thrown into the action late in the year, and it's taken time. And I think that this is the year when you are a small school player, you make that leap in was it year 4, right? Year 4 is I think the year for Trey Pipkins, and I want to go back and look at the game again. But your observations of the O-line, Eric.
Yeah, I haven't rewatched it yet either. Just general takeaway, I think they were solid. I actually talked to Trey after the game, and he said, we have to kind of be honest with ourselves, even though there's that 0 in the sack column. It wasn't perfect, and there were times where, the pressure maybe got to Herbert a little bit. I think the O-line played, like I said, good against a pretty good defensive front. But Justin is a part of that too. I mean, the coach said it takes all 11 players to make sure there's no sacks. And just, like I said earlier, seeing Herbert for the first time, really focusing on him in person, using his athleticism to kind of move around in the pocket. There was that play to Keenan, obviously, in the second quarter, the 42-yarder, where he kind of rolls out and just kind of flicks his wrist, right, and just floats it down the field. And even the touchdown to Gerald on the left side, he escaped the pocket, kind of got away from that cornerback, I think, and just fired a dime. And looking at the replay, it was almost like the velocity of the throw from Justin carried Gerald into the end zone, because Gerald caught it at like the 3 or the 4, and like he just kind of caught the ball and just kept going. So yeah, kudos to the O-line, but kudos to Justin too for being mobile, the running backs for stepping up in pass pro, and early offensive rookie of the year Xander Horvath probably had a couple key blocks too.
I love it. We got to keep that going, especially if he scores Thursday night in Arrowhead. All right, that's going to be a thing. Keep it rolling. We're going to keep it rolling. All right, guys, we have so much more to get into. Quick break. We'll bring in Joe Reedy of the Associated Press. All right, something we're going to do every Monday here on the Final Drive. Bring in a beat writer for a round table, and today it's Joe Reedy, Associated Press. Joe, Chargers win 24-19, a big AFC West win to start the season. We got our overall takeaways to start the show. Love to hear yours.
I think the theme of the game was the new acquisitions, and that the NFL is a week-to-week overreaction league, and after 1 week, you got to give Tom Telesco an A+ for the guys that he brought in. Where you talk about Khalil Mack with the breakout game that he had, especially considering he played only 7 games last season. You look at all 3 touchdowns were to new players. Xander Horvath, the draft pick in the 7th round, DeAndre Carter, 2 great catches in the second quarter, including on the touchdown, and then Gerald Everett in the third quarter, literally dragging a guy on his back 3 yards into the end zone, a former Charger no less than Roderick Teamer, to put him up by 2 scores. So J.K. Scott, great game punting wise, that helped, and the coverage team's doing well. So far so good as far as the new acquisitions, and it also showed on a day when maybe Mike Williams was held in check and Keenan Allen got hurt that there definitely is depth on this team.
Joe, and speaking of some of those new additions on the offense, Justin Herbert was asked about them yesterday, and he said part of the beauty of some of these guys that they have is the fact that you can shuffle guys around at different positions and they can play multiple positions. A lot of these guys they weren't on the field with Herbert, obviously, during the preseason. Did it surprise you, though, that they were able to have the production that they did?
With Everett, it didn't, because Justin has been high on Everett throughout training camp, and they got enough snaps and in the joint workouts and everything that I had a feel was going to work. Because I asked Justin last Friday, the yards after the catch, was that going to, how much did that excite you? And his eyes lit up. And we don't get Justin's eyes to light up too much during a Friday press conference mentioning strategy. So that was good to see. Carter surprised me, because I think we saw it last year when Andre Roberts was here. Andre Roberts didn't get many snaps on offense. So maybe we thought that was going to be the same way with Carter. But Carter quickly comes in after the Allen injury. Those 2 catches, Next Gen had the catch probability of both, I think, under 30%. And they were both thrown into tight windows. I know Justin loved the touchdown throw, but to me, that first one where Mooring was nearly draped all over him at the time that Carter came up with the ball, especially near the sideline impressed me more. And then, Horvath, maybe we'll see more out of him compared to Gabe Neighbors. I think there's definitely the potential there on short yardage and 4th down to see more than what we did. But Mack and Bryce Callahan and all those things too on defense. But the offense, I think Justin will mind sharing top billing with Khalil Mack if he has a game that he did on Sunday.
Joe, you mentioned J.K. Scott. I was going to ask you about special teams. I think some people might have been a little worried after the preseason, especially that Dallas game, giving up 2 touchdowns. But a pretty good start for, mostly a pretty good start on special teams. What would your takeaway in that phase?
Yeah, I think the coverage units, that was the area against Dallas where all of us were nervous because of the 2 returns given up. But, punt coverage unit getting down there on the one J.K. Scott punt to get it down at the 2. I think one of J.K. Scott's benefits, especially when Tom signed him, was punts inside the 20. And he definitely showed that here in the opener, and it worked. I think, coverage units did their jobs, which was good to see. And as Brandon said, we are going to see a lot of starters out there playing special teams. I think the one thing that jumped out on me looking at the snap count, Kenneth Murray, no defensive snaps, but he was the player with the most special team snaps. So that just shows you how much of an importance that they want starters, or for the starters and first round picks to get out there and show what they can do on teams.
Joe, got to ask you about a couple of Seminoles. Derwin James first. He's lining up against next to Khalil Mack rather in the first quarter, gets the team's first sack of the season, and then to close the game, 4th and 8, he's one-on-one with Davante Adams. And, no J.C. Jackson in this. How about the performance of Asante Samuel Jr., especially peeling off his guy for that key interception on Davante in the second half?
The thing I do wonder about Asante, and I think we saw it last year early in the season, is does Asante get his props for peeling off when the ball was in the air, or are Ronaldo, Derek, and Brandon going to hit him a little bit for maybe doing that? Because we saw it. I remember on the 2 picks last year that he got hit a little bit for not following proper technique. But I think on this one, with the ball in the air and peeling and making the athletic interception that he did, he's going to get his props. And I think also he was the one matched up against Davante Adams for the most part. 11 of Adams' 17, 18 targets were when being covered by Asante. And Adams did get 7 receptions, but I think if you're a second-year cornerback, forcing 4 incompletions on 11 targets, which to me, for a second-year guy, is a pretty good percentage, you're going to be happy. And then Derwin, what can you say? I mean, that sack in the first quarter where it looked like he was going to be down on the ground, not break stride at all.
Scary.
Yes, and just level Carr for the Chargers' first sack was holy bleep material.
Speaking of holy bleep material, I'll ask it. Justin Herbert. Let's get the Herbert question in here because he had another great performance.
He didn't throw for 300 though, so yeah. It's like, come on, Justin. You could have you had what, 203, 204 in the first half. You couldn't complete the 300. Come on, man.
Haley, the title for this podcast should be Holy Bleep Material, courtesy of Joe Reedy.
Holy bleep material. But getting to Justin, though, I'll ask this. Football 202. We heard this all off season long as well. If last year was the 101, the implementation of the offense, 202 is building off of it. With some of these additions coming in, these, I don't want to say back end guys, but guys that you wouldn't necessarily think of they're not the starters in this offense. What impressed you the most about what he was able to do now in his not only 3rd year in the NFL, but 2nd season at least in this offense, navigating through those reads out there on the field?
Comfort level, I think you didn't see him struggle. He led the league last year in throwing out of the pocket or scrambling, and I do think we're going to see more of that this year from him. and the one to Carter in the second quarter. Yeah, he had a lot in the second quarter where it seemed like he scrambled, got outside the numbers, and completed on the run. And also too, because there were a couple plays where it's like, why doesn't he just run it and get the 4 or 5 yards? The fact that he's taking more care of his body, and now as a third-year quarterback, you know what? If I can dump it off for 5 or 6, that's better than me getting obliterated or trying to slide and get hit that way. And he did have a pretty good baseball slide there in the second quarter to work down to the 2. Drew the penalty against Hobbs, where I know Hobbs was doing the "what do you expect me to do?" But I do, and that's something that we see from defensive players a lot, especially here. But I do think Hobbs could have lowered the targeting rate slightly. He could have gone into the chest or a little bit down. I think he had time to do that instead of with the arm hit the helmet, and I think that's where he got the penalty that way. So, if Justin can continue to progress, and also too, we're going to talk a lot about the division and these pass rushers. No sacks allowed by this offensive line, so that I think with Justin scrambling and making plays and causing the pocket to move, that was the most reassuring development to me.
Yeah, Joe, you mentioned the no sacks. Probably one of the most common, phrases we hear around the league is that the game is won in the trenches. Did you think that was the case yesterday for the Chargers on both sides of the ball? You mentioned the no sacks, but the run defense only allowed 64 rushing yards to the Raiders.
Yeah, I think both sides of the ball, they dominated on both sides of the trenches. I think the offensive line, Trey Pipkins for the most part had a good game. There were a couple run plays where there were stuffs caused, but the fact that Trey still hasn't continued to allow a sack since 2000. What year are we in? Oh yeah, since 2020. Hey, when you've been covering the league as long as I have, the years all run together. And heck, I covered Josh McDaniels' first game in 2009. Thank goodness that ending wasn't like this one, but I digress. That the trenches on both sides played really well, and the defensive line for the Chargers too came up and played and was able to contain yardage. I think there were only a couple big rushes that were exposed, but certainly something to build on going into Thursday night.
Speaking of Thursday night, Joe, we'll get you out of here on this. Your 30-second preview and what we should expect, Chargers, Chiefs, and Arrowhead.
For those wondering, yes, the Amazon broadcast will be on broadcast TV, so check your local listings, and I'm sure you guys on the website will be promoting the LA station for that. But hey, top 2 quarterbacks in week 1 in terms of yardage and ratings, Patrick Mahomes and Justin Herbert. So expect a shootout on Thursday night in Arrowhead. And Chargers. After 2 weeks, we were saying they had to be at least 1-1 after the first 2 games. And if you were 2-0, you were definitely playing with house money. They got the win in week 1. So no matter what happens Thursday night in Kansas City, they're in a good position. And hey, Justin Herbert is 2-0 at Arrowhead. So can he make it 3-0? Should be fun Thursday night.
Yep, Prime Video should be very happy as well. Joe Reedy, Associative Press. Always appreciate the time, my friend. We'll see you soon.
No problem. Thank you.
All right, always good to hear from Joe Reedy, and we ended with him talking about Chargers-Chiefs, and this is the matchup that we've had circled all offseason, Eric. You had to get a win against the Raiders to put yourself in a good position against the Chiefs, and here we are, both teams winning in Week 1.
Yeah, I'm excited for it. from afar, Charger Chiefs has been really fun to watch as an outsider, so I can't wait for Thursday night. Joe kind of touched on it, right? Like two top-tier quarterbacks going at it prime time in a great environment at Arrowhead. I'm excited to see it. You know, there were a lot of questions, I think, about the Chiefs' offense coming into Week 1. How are they going to do without Tyreek Hill? They looked all right. You know, they looked okay with 44 points and, 5 touchdowns from Mahomes. I think what I'm excited to see is, how Brandon Staley schemes against this new look offense, because it's different than what we've seen in the past with Tyreek. We talked about Derwin last segment. Where is he at? Does JC play? And who does he lock up on? It's only week 2, but it feels like a really important game. And if the Chargers can get this one, kind of like what Joe said, they're playing with house money. They're 2-0 heading into this mini bye next week. It's all good vibes here in Southern California.
Hayley, what kind of statement would it be if the Chargers start the year 2-0 in the AFC West, this division that everybody has been saying is maybe the toughest division of football over the last decade or so? To come out and to beat the Raiders and Chiefs, what do you think that would mean for this team?
I think it would be huge. I think it would be gigantic, but I'm going to be the one to pump it back just a little bit because it is still so early in the season, right? And you obviously, you want to win these games. These are the games that you want to win because, as we've talked many years now, they almost count double because of the divisional implications. But you got to win them on the back end of the year, too. You got to win them later on at the same time. And I think, to me, almost though, it's good to get a couple of these games out of the way early because everything is so new. You don't really know what to expect, and teams that you see in weeks 1 and 2 are going to look vastly different when you see them later on down the road in the season. The Broncos come up in mid-October. But I think, though, regardless of that, you want to win these games, and it would be huge because you at least have the leg up in the division. And what's the easiest path to the playoffs, right? Winning your division, which is something this Chargers team has not done in many, many years, and it's been dominated by the Chiefs. So I'm excited, though, I will say, to get back to a night game at Kansas City. It's been a minute since we've had one of those. We obviously know, I'm sure that Mike Williams touchdown is going to be rerun a million times because we always see it. But it's exciting to get back. I think the atmosphere is going to be great. And I think just seeing Justin Herbert, who won, at Arrowhead last year in, what was that, week 3?
Week 3,
so?
yeah.
Yeah, week 3 early on. But get him in that night mode. Turn on the night mode, dark mode. It's going to be really fun to see all of that happen.
Yeah, primetime Justin Herbert has typically been pretty good over the last couple of years, right? I'd say so. Mahomes and Herbert combined for 8 touchdowns and no picks in week 1. And I alluded to it with Jeff, Eric. I mean, if Prime Video was picking a game to kick off their brand new broadcast, Chargers Chiefs at Arrowhead, the home opener for Kansas City against Justin Herbert, I'd say that's pretty good.
That's why they picked it, right? That's why the game was announced months ago. And with all the fanfare, if you're going to have this Prime Video game, with all eyes on it, you want the quarterback matchup, and the Chargers and Chiefs definitely have that. There's something special, I think, about Arrowhead, too. And we mentioned Herbert being 2-0 there. I just think that the Chargers can make a statement going on the road. Because Hayley said it, the Chiefs have just owned this division for years. And I think it'll be a massive statement if the Chargers can win. You almost have to win these games and give yourself the belief you can do it. And, week 2, but if you're up a game already against KC going into week 3, that's where you want to be.
And I'll say this, I think in September's so wacky. You saw some of the scores around the league yesterday. I think teams are trying to figure out who they are. And if you can win while figuring out who you are and getting more chemistry, I mean, keep in mind, we saw 6 sacks and 3 interceptions yesterday, Hayley. And these guys had never played in a game before. I mean, half the defense is brand new. So if that's what it looks like week 1, I'm not expecting that every week, obviously, but you would think guys get more comfortable with each other as the season goes on.
That seems to be sort of the vibe. And when you talk about the comfort, I'm going to kind of dabble off the field for a second and just talk about the camaraderie too, because you've also heard this all offseason, all throughout camp, that these new additions, guys like Joey Bosa, have said they felt like they've been here for years. And when I hear someone like Joey say that, you stop and think, and this was prior to them even playing a game together. This was prior to them even suiting up together for the first time. So knowing that and how he felt that way, then you get in a game and you have the production that you have. I think that's huge, and I think it'll only pay dividends for weeks to come. Like you said, all of this isn't going to always happen every week. We know that the NFL, there's no perfect season besides the 72 Dolphins, and Lord, that's insane and difficult to match, and no one's done it since. But at the same time, just being able to put it together in week one and build off of it, that's what you want.
Well, a good first week for Chargers fans. We'll be back actually Friday. So the final drive, usually on Mondays, not this week. We'll do it Friday morning after Chargers Chiefs on Prime Video. For Eric Smith and Hayley Elwood, I'm Chris Hayre. This has been week one of the final drive.